Welcome to the Savvy Leader Podcast, real conversations about the grit, grace, and gratitude it takes to be the savvy leader you were always meant to be. Hey friends, welcome back to the Savvy Leader Podcast. I'm Kristin. I'm your host, and this month, let's have a casual conversation, just you and me. Because I've been exploring what it really means to simplify, not just for growth in your business or your work life, but in how we live, how we lead, and even how we think. And here's what I've found. The simplification part is not actually the hard part. Because if we're honest, we already know what needs to go. We know what's misaligned. We know what's distracting. We absolutely know what we have been tolerating for far too long. Sometimes we just don't want to admit it. But when you do, when you get honest, and when you get brave enough to remove the easy things and the hard things, you create some real space. But that is where the things get so uncomfortable, the most uncomfortable actually, because we're not prepared for what it feels like to stand in open space like that. We're living in a time when so many things are easier than they've ever been. Tools are faster, more available, and more affordable even. Decisions can be automated. When your head is in the right place, you make a great decision, and you can put that decision in motion to set it and forget it, so you never have to worry about negotiating with yourself on that right decision ever again. Tasks that used to take hours now take minutes. And spring is here. Longer days, more sunshine, a natural sense of forward movement and growth. But more time doesn't automatically mean we're going to use it well. In fact, it often creates a new kind of problem. Because if we're not intentional, if we're not aware, we don't step into the space. We fill it. We fill it up with more doing, more scrolling, and just another kind of noise. So then the real question becomes, what are you doing with the time you've been given back? One of the conversations that I've been sitting on this week came from a lead Brainy Bites book discussion around the mountain is you. And the truth was simply clear, also not easy to face. Most of our resistance is internal. That's right. Self-sabotage isn't actually as dramatic as it sounds. And it doesn't always look like failure. It can look like hesitation, avoidance, overthinking. And sometimes it looks like generosity, overgiving, overextending, and staying just comfortable enough to avoid being fully seen. I've had to take a really hard look at this in my own life. There have been multiple seasons where I got right up to the edge of something truly meaningful. And just before I stepped over the summit of success, I instead stepped to the side. I felt it. I felt the shift to the side. It wasn't backwards. It wasn't failing, but I felt it happening. Just off to the side. Close enough to say that I was in it, but not fully stepping into it. And I kept asking myself, why? Because on the surface, that didn't make any damn sense. I was working hard. I was building. I was showing up. Damn it. But underneath, there was this conflict. A conflict between my desire to grow and my discomfort with what I believed growth would require me to become. I told myself stories like, well, money isn't available to me. You know, money really just isn't that important in my life. And that wasn't entirely true. Because the deeper truth of it all was this: if I fully stepped into the success that I was reaching for, I might be seen differently. I might outgrow certain relationships. I may be judged in a new kind of light. I might have to own a level of value that I wasn't sure I was ready to hold on to. And that created a quiet internal tension. Because on one hand, I value generosity, humility, service. But on the other hand, I was using those same values to justify staying small, to give it away, to redirect, and avoid fully receiving. That's the part that we don't talk about enough, because sometimes self-sabotage isn't about the fear of failure. It's about the internal conflict between who you've been and the who you're becoming. And instead of reconciling that tension, we step to the side. And that's what it looks like: proximity to the life you want without actually crossing the threshold. And this is where the alignment becomes so real. Alignment isn't a strategy. It's not how it looks. It's not how productive you are. It is how your life feels from the inside out. You can be achieving, building, and growing and still feel like something's missing. That tension, that low-level pressure, that sense that you're still proving something. That's a misalignment. Alignment feels different than that. It's steady, it's clear and honest and authentic. There is so much less internal negotiation. There's less forcing and less performing. You're not chasing approval. You're not overriding your own damn values to reach it. You're settled within you. I had a moment recently that reminded me of this in a very real way. I was hiking this incredible pathway in northern Florida called the Cathedral of the Palms, a very grand title, yes. And I was on the main path. I got lost for a little bit. I took a wrong turn and I was getting tired. And I reached one milestone along the path that was really invigorating. But after reaching it, I thought to myself, I'm awfully tired. Maybe it's time to turn back. Maybe I should take a shortcut. Maybe this Cathedral of Palms isn't really what it's all cracked up to be. Maybe it's not so amazing. And I almost turned back. I almost did take the shortcut, but for some reason, my body decided for me that we would continue on. Not because I couldn't physically keep going, but something in my mind kept saying, maybe this is as good as it gets. There's that quiet disbelief, that subtle ceiling we place on ourselves, that moment where we decide without saying it out loud that this is enough, this is good enough, right? Not because it is, but because continuing would require something more from us. And I stood there for a moment. I felt it, that tension between stopping and continuing. And I chose to keep going. And what was on the other side wasn't just a better view. It was a completely different experience. Peaceful, expansive, and certain. And that was what alignment felt like for me. It doesn't mean it's going to show up at the beginning of the path. Sometimes it's revealed after you take the risk and you move through the resistance. So, if you're trying to determine your own alignment, don't ask how it should look. Ask your body. Where do you feel expanded? Where do you feel grounded and settled? Not anxious, not strained, because alignment isn't loud. It's a very quiet, internal knowing. This brings me to something else I've been reflecting on more deeply lately too, and that's success. What does success actually look like for me or for you? Because It's not always visible, and it doesn't have to be impressive. It doesn't have to look the way we were taught it should. Sometimes success looks like hosting a conversation that shifts a perspective, fixing something that's been neglected for a while, or stepping away long enough for real recovery and a reset. Sometimes it looks like choosing not to push, not to chase, and not to perform, but to realign. And this connects back to something I shared recently. Just because we've created more time doesn't mean we're using it well. Success is not what you fill your time with. It's how intentionally you use it. For me, success has changed. Yeah, absolutely. It's not about the status or the titles. It's not about accumulation, because I don't have the space for that anymore. It is about the freedom, though. The freedom to serve, the freedom to live aligned with my faith, and the freedom to build spaces where people around me feel supported. And also the freedom to choose how I spend my time. To rest when needed, to grow when called, and to deepen instead of just doing. That's a very different definition than I used to have. And it requires some serious honesty, because before you move on to the next goal, before you fill up your schedule, pause and ask yourself, what exactly does success mean to me right now? Not what it used to mean, not what you were taught or what you thought, not what looks good on the outside, but what's true for you right now in this place. Because that answer will determine how you use the space you've now created. I'm going to leave you guys with this. You've simplified and you've created the space. You've gotten some of your time back. Now what? How will you use it? And where will you grow? Where will you rest with intention? And then what will you deepen or enhance? Or will you unconsciously let it slip away? Because how you use this space, that's where the real growth begins. If this resonated with you, take a moment and reflect on it this week. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. And if you're a part of our Savvy Living or Lead communities, bring this into the conversation, because leadership begins when we become honest about the direction that we are actually walking. And I will see you guys in the next episode. Until then, stay savvy, my friends. Thanks for listening to the Savvy Leader Podcast. Be sure to check out the description for any relevant links and additional details that we might have shared throughout this week's episode. And if you're looking to continue this conversation, we'd love to see you over at the Savvy Leaders Lounge on Substack or the Savvy Living Network for additional insights. That's savvylivingnetwork.com. We'll see you there.